These cooks make up to 13,200 meals a day for the 4,400 cadets here at the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York. Today, the team is making over 22,000 meatballs, combined with 4,000 pounds of noodles and 150 gallons of tomato sauce. And that's just for one of the dishes on the lunch menu.
I would say in comparison to a standard college, we do things a little differently, I think, than most colleges do.
Attention all cadets, for lunch we are having chicken.
There are lunchtime rituals, and each meal is balanced specifically for these future military leaders' rigorous workload.
On a normal day, we're probably providing between 12 and 1,500 calories for these individuals. Now, whether they eat all of that, right, is up to them and what they're choosing for that day. The cadets' nutritional requirements are elevated because they are engaging in academic work, in military training, as well as their physical exercise that they're completing here day to day.
Every meal is earned, not given. So the fact that we are able to march in step, keeping our military bearing, shows after a long day or long morning of classes, we've earned this meal.
Meals at West Point are served here at Washington Hall, the historic mess hall where Army cooks have been feeding West Point cadets for nearly 100 years.
At meal times, the destination is Washington Hall, where the cadet gains back the pounds he lost during last summer's hike. And the food is tops in wholesomeness.
Probably our most difficult meal to support here is our lunch meals, where the cadets have about 25 minutes to get into the building, sit down, eat, and get out.
I think the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is how fast it all goes. So it starts at noon at formation. We all get in there by 12:10. And then after that, the food is served to 4,000 people and eaten all within 15 minutes.
But it's not just the cadets who have to move fast.
A lot of the cook staff who have been in those military environments and who have understood what that means to serve and what that looks like. So I think they try to structure the menu so that they may see similar things when they're out, not at West Point.
But how does the staff at West Point prepare over 4,000 nutritious meals that can be served and eaten in under 25 minutes? Insider was granted rare access to the mess hall to see how they pull it off. The food is prepared underneath the mess hall, in a labyrinth of hallways, kitchens, and freezers.
So feeding 4,000 cadets is certainly a challenge. It is also a very well-oiled machine. You've got multiple refrigerators and freezers here. My whole background in the Army has been in food service the entire 20 years that I've been in the Army. In the cadet mess, I have approximately 90 Department of the Army civilian employees that are cooks. They're the ones that cook all the food. But we also have another approximately 130 or so contractors that work in the mess here, and their job is to actually serve the food to the cadets. The challenges preparing 4,000 meals 3 times a day are substantial. Our staff is arriving at 3:30 in the morning, and we're not opening for breakfast for another 3 hours, but the reason is because it takes that 3 hours to prepare food for 4,500 cadets.
On the menu for today's lunch, spaghetti with meatballs, breadsticks, fruit salad, broccoli, and iced cake. Prepping enough spaghetti for over 4,000 students starts nearly 2 hours before lunchtime. In the large kitchen, cooks start the spaghetti by boiling 400 pounds of pasta in these giant vats. Then, they add 22,500 meatballs, which they prepared early this morning, enough for each cadet to have 5. With the spaghetti underway, cooks begin steaming 720 pounds of broccoli. Meanwhile, in the bakery, 400 cakes are being iced and placed on carts. Back in the main kitchen, cooks drain the water from the vats and add 150 gallons of tomato sauce. While the spaghetti is simmering, cooks in a temperature-controlled cold kitchen are preparing for a lunch that won't be served for another 2 days. These cooks are opening 2 pallets of frozen ribs weighing 3,600 pounds and breaking them into pieces. Prepping meals days in advance is one of the methods the mess hall staff uses to serve so many cadets so quickly.
For menu development, I work with a dietitian that works for the United States Corps of Cadets, which is upstairs from the cadet mess here. We come up with options that using Army recipes that are in the Army system, as well as other recipes that are available online, and we review those recipes, make sure that they meet the dietary guidelines that they need to meet for West Point's standards, and then we try them out.
I am a registered dietitian and a certified specialist in sports dietetics for the Corps of Cadets at West Point. So the menus are structured in a certain way to make sure that they are meeting all of their calorie requirements. So on the menus, there's usually carbohydrate-based foods, which are going to fuel their brain health, support their academic performance, as well as prime their muscles for some of that moderate to high intensity exercise that they're going to engage in. And then we usually have plant and animal-based protein sources in order to support their tissue and muscle recovery. And then we have a lot of different fruit and vegetable options, so fresh fruit. We have cooked vegetables at the table, as well as a pretty robust salad bar that provides lots of antioxidants to make sure that they get that color in, it supports their immune system, and make sure that they combat some of that inflammation that's occurring from that intense exercise.
Once all the dishes are finished, they are served into portioned containers and loaded into heated carts.
We have around 50 to 75 of the hot carts going, so generally speaking, each hot cart will hold food for about 10 tables.
10 minutes until assembly for lunch formation.
Before lunch formation and before morning formation, the plebes call minutes, and they say the meal for that day.
For lunch, we are having chicken, rice, and vegetables.
After receiving the minutes read aloud by freshmen known as plebes,
5 minutes remaining.
cadets get into company formation in front of Washington Hall in an area called the apron.
All right, right.
While the students gather, members of the West Point band play them into formation. Meanwhile, inside the mess hall, the waitstaff is setting out the water and bread for the 25-minute meal.
Oh, it's like everything you've seen in the movies. Before formation, we heard the band start kicking off, really telling us to fall in the companies.
4 count 4.
Once the accountability is taken of the company, then the battalion, and the regiment, we all start marching to the beat of the drum to the mess hall. And really the drums help us stay in step, keep the cadence, and keeping our military bearing.
As cadets file in, the waitstaff has only 6 minutes to get the food from the hot carts onto each table.
We make sure that all the table is set in terms of etiquette and making sure that everybody has their silverware, plates, napkins, cups. The plebes are actually in charge of making sure that this etiquette actually happens.
Meals at West Point are full of traditions that the cadets observe, like the plebes pouring water for the upperclassmen.
Etiquette is a huge deal in the military, and so this kind of just reinforces from your first year here that etiquette is super important.
At the plebe end of the table, every seat has a specific role and responsibility.
Typically you'll have one person at the end, and that's your cold beverage corporal. They will be in charge of making sure that everyone has a cup full of water, because there's water pitchers on the table when you get there. And then there will be a gunner to the left of them at the end of the table. They're in charge of the desserts. And then to the right of the cold beverage corporal is the hot beverage corporal. That person is in charge of getting, if there's soup in the buffet line or like coffee in the mornings.
Take seats.
And then the plebes will call the table, which means that they basically say like the 4th class has performed all their duties and now we're ready to eat. And then at that point we all start eating our meal.
Portion sizes are crucial to ensure each cadet is receiving their daily caloric intake. But some tables in the mess hall receive more than the standard portion.
So there's a variety of different cadets here, right, with a variety of different nutrition needs, and they're always doing different levels of activity.
Tables with a heavy designation receive a portion and a half, and tables with a heavy sign get double portions.
For some of the athletes that we have that have to maintain a higher body weight for their sport, such as football or heavyweight wrestling or some of our track and field throwers, they require more calories to be able to support that activity, as well as keep their body weight in a range to be competitive in their sport. So they may need more calories to support that.
Let's go.
For cadets, lunch is a mandatory meal.
They're all coming here from all over the country and honestly all over the world because they're exchange students as well. So it's a way to make sure that they can build that camaraderie and build that build that team together by making them have that meal.
For upperclassmen, breakfast and some dinners are optional, where they can choose from several other options on campus. Another tradition in Washington Hall, all 4 years of students sit next to each other for lunch.
I love having a table with both freshmen, juniors, seniors. It definitely allows you to interact with people in your company that you normally wouldn't. And we switch tables every semester as well, so we get to build those new relationships with people throughout our 4 years here.
What are some of the favorite meals of the cadets here?
So I think probably the most favorite meal, and something you'll probably hear a lot, is there's a spicy chicken patty that the cadets absolutely love.
My favorite meal here would probably be either spicy chicken or the sweet and sour chicken with rice.
Favorite meal is definitely Crispito, sir. It's like a hot dog burrito, if I had to explain it.
I really do like the Taco Tuesdays. I also think they do a very good job with the seafoods.
What's your least favorite food here?
My least favorite food would probably be taco night.
Probably the pork chop.
I'm not really a big Philly cheesesteak guy.
Sometimes they'll get burnt out on eating chicken. There's only so many proteins that we can prepare. Chicken is one of them that really almost everybody eats. So, it's trying to find different ways to season the chicken or different ways to prepare the chicken so that, their palate doesn't get burnt out from eating the same thing.
This is Washington Hall inside the cadet mess area, as we call it. So behind me is the famous mural. The inspiration behind this was by General Douglas MacArthur, class 1903. And in the 1930s, he became Chief of Staff of the Army. He worked with the academic board here, and they came up with the concept of battles, leaders, commanders, and technology. You'll see Alexander the Great up top with a chariot. You'll see siege rams and so on. All the states are by admission. So you got Arkansas, Texas, Iowa, California, and so on. Behind me is the entrance from the mess hall when it was finished in 1929. So below me, about 3 or 4 feet, would be steps, and then the grass area out here. This was the front of the mess hall. So in the early 1960s, the idea was to expand the enrollment of the academy because the Army and the Air Force Academy, which was only a few years old, had an enrollment top of 2,500, where the Naval Academy had 4,000 midshipmen by law. So there's different aspects that occurred, but in 1965, the law was signed and they started building and expanding. So they built out from the original 1929 mess hall this way.
So at the end of the meal, normally they'll call upper class rest or brigade rise, and then at that point everybody can get up and leave. So at that point, meal is ended. It usually only takes like 12 to 15 minutes for everybody to eat, and then we're on our way to our next class.
And when does the next class usually start?
Our next class starts at 12:45.
As the cadets begin to leave Washington Hall, the waitstaff cleans the tables. And back in the kitchens, the cooks have begun preparing dinner, which is only 5.5 hours away.